Hello and welcome everybody. It's episode 36 of Kerbal Space Endeavour, and we are back here on Dres, where after our initial landing we figured that we didn't bring a carbonite scanner along, so now we're going to go for a second landing, still with only having refueled a tiny little bit. And once we reach the little crater over there, then we're going to land on the corner of the crater, because most of the time there's more carbonite on slopes and close areas than actually on plain surfaces such as craters or just normal areas. So yeah, we're just going to time warp here a little bit until we have an pretty good maneuver. We're also collecting some signs above the small craters. And now, even some more signs. And now as we go in for a landing, it's more of a live version time. Okay, let's do some science. Nope. Laser surface scan. Dres seems to only attract wimpy, lightweight asteroids, most likely stony chondrites. Scans of the surface of the craters indicates only a low concentration of iron nickel among the silicates. Were you expecting something different on the surface? Yes, I was. The gravity scan measures the local gravity in fine detail and records its variations. The planet appears to be seismically inactive. The temperature fluctuates regularly with the sunrise and the sunset. Not a bad landing, if I do say so myself. And the goo looks pretty normal. Transmit the data. One of the samples evaporates when exposed to the environment. Ooh, that's not good. Transmit that as well. Okay. And as always, one of the things we have to do is get out with a superb backflip once again. Plant a flag so we know that we've been here in the small craters. And then just get back inside and lift off to the spot right over the horizon right there. And there we go, we have a liftoff. Once again, I seem to have forgotten to retract the drill. Thank God that that is not actually included in the game and it doesn't snap and break off. Hooray! But yeah, let's lose a little bit more time acceleration so we don't waste too much time. Once again, we go in for a landing, start collecting some carbonite. And yeah, it seems like there was a lot more here, but we're going to use time warp anyway to fasten this up a little bit. Okay, so yeah, this time I'm actually smart enough to retract it, and we have another liftoff. Completely refueled, we now have to make our way to our drive stage in orbit and start refueling it. The good thing is this craft has more fuel than the Moho mission. As you know, this is a little bit of a redesign, and therefore we have a lot more capacity of refueling. So yeah, I was quite aggressive here on my maneuvering, thinking that okay, I have quite excessive amount of fuel, so we're just gonna go in here as quickly as we can because time is of the essence. And as you can see right here, we actually have a fairly close encounter, and with a little bit more movement right there, there we go. That is as close as we can get, and now we can go in for the docking. Now in retrospective, I have another problem once again. As you remember, from time to time the drive stage around Moho tended to spin for some reason, even after leaving it completely dead in space. So once again, we actually do have to send a crew member over, there we go, to stabilize the craft so it stops spinning, because trying to dock with something that spins is a waste of monopropellant, and yeah, it is pretty much losing time. So yeah, once we have it stabilized, it's pretty easy here for our commander Julene to go in for a regular docking, thanks to the docking alignment indicator. So now we have a big docking port in a 2.5 meter one instead of a small one, if you remember from the Moho mission. I was recently asked to put my craft files online. I will try to put any new crafts that I'm designing and building in the description so you guys can use them and download them. I hope there will be any help to you. And yeah, from forth on, craft files will be in the description, and I will always mention when there's a new craft file available. Okay, let's get back to where we're trying to land into a new and more interesting area, and this is this big canyon down here. And it's a very distinctive feature for Dres, so I figured, well, I'm going to show you this because this is actually the last stop I went to before I left. So yeah, I skipped a lot of landings that I did on Dres because it wasn't really that interesting to begin with. And the science data that you will hear right now will actually tell you that. So, what do we have here? Significant concentrations of iron are detected in the surface of this trench, suggesting that it was dug out by a large metallic asteroid. Okay. Were you expecting something different on the surface? Yes, I was. The sensors measure the local gravity in fine detail. We've read that one before. And we've read that one before. Very little sunlight makes it all the way down here. It is very cold. This trench certainly the most spectacular feature of Dres. The goo is congealed into a very odd shape here. Okay. And why does the material study not want to show up? Would be good to know if we can get that going. One of the sample evaporates when exposed to the environment. Well, thank you for telling me that. Julene, you're doing your usual backflips. And we record the situation about, well, we record our observation about the situation. Did we start it? Yes, we did. There's a little bit of wobbling here and there. I'm a little bit concerned, but so far it seems to be stable. Okay, new flag for the Dres trench. There we go. Our beautiful flag. The Dres trench. Commander Julene approves. So once again we have a little bit of a time jump here where we're already trying to encounter our drive stage again because we have been to all of the biomes of Dres. I know that I've skipped quite a bit about it, but honestly, Dres is not really that interesting. Okay, let's move on. As you can see here, we have a Dres to Kerbal window, which is very, very far away. And technically, I would have enough life support to get us there, but I decided, why not try to get back earlier? So I set up this maneuver here that will get us pretty close to Dres, almost all the way down to Eve, and then get us a pretty sooner, let's call it a sooner encounter to Kerbal. And yeah, I figured, well, we have enough fuel and we want to save some time, so let's do it. So we're just going to move up on our maneuver node, detach from the main craft back there. Well, not main craft, actually the lander. And we're going to leave it floating in space around Dres, like we did around Moho. And it is time to leave yet another planetary body around Kerbal. Alright, and here we're going to detach our first 3 fuel tanks. So we still have more than enough fuel, as you can see, to get back home. And yeah, we have definitely enough fuel. So let's move on to something interesting. And that is the Eve-Satcom mission. So this is actually the first one to arrive. Our Joule missions are still on their way. Even our Duna mission is on their way. And interestingly about Eve is that the atmosphere is a lot thicker than Kerbal's, and also the atmosphere is a little bit the altitude at which the atmosphere is or exists is a lot higher. So we have to be actually pretty careful here so we do not burn up. And what I am going to do here is something pretty dangerous because this mission could fail very easily because of that, is first of all the main long distance SATCOM, that is this part right here, will need to be the first one to enter the atmosphere and get into a stable orbit. So what I'm going to do is, well, first of all, we're going to have to set up some satellites here so we do have a connection once we leave the omnidirectional SATCOM range. So there we go, we renamed it. Let's turn on these engines. And yeah, we have to get there before all of the other crafts get there. And once again, I seem to have had a problem on clicking on getting a maneuver node going. And the SATCOM, the long distance SATCOM for Eve, needs to go into a polar orbit. So this is why I'm setting up the maneuver like this. And now I'm just messing up with a precise node to get myself down into the atmosphere of the planet to aerobrake a little bit. So we have our maneuver, we have our engines, let's crank it up and burn. Yeah, burn baby, burn. Okay, enough of that. Okay, and yeah, that looks almost perfect. Nice, 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 nice. Let's jump ahead to where we actually have the re-entry part. Well, actually, no. Before we do that, we jump back here to our main drive stage, where we're going to detach our Surveyor 1 and Surveyor 2. One will go into a 250 kilometer orbit, which has a carbonite scanner on it. Haha, this time I did not forget. And the low radar scanner, and the Surveyor 2, which will go into a 750 kilometer orbit, which will have the high radar scanner. Once again, I'm just jumping back and forth and setting up the satellite so we have a connection. And yeah, still more jumping around. No, there we go. Using a little bit of RCS to get ourselves away. These things are equipped with ion engines, so they take quite a long time to accelerate or decelerate, or however you want to put it. But thanks to post-editing, this goes by a lot faster than it originally did. So yeah, once again, the surveyors also need to go into a polar orbit, so we actually discover all of the surface of Eve without having to change our plane or our eccentricity or anything else. We can just put it into a stable polar orbit and it discovers everything for us. So let's move on to the next one, and we need to set up, well, pretty much I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to show all of this in every little detail, but what I'm doing is all of these crafts will go into their pretty much destined orbits, but I want them to arrive all at the different time so that I can actually steer them once they go into the atmosphere of the planet. Because if you're not with the craft as it enters a atmospheric body, it either disappears and explodes, or the aerobraking effect does not happen because it's not being calculated by the game, and therefore you lose, well, delta V. I mean, these crafts here have more than enough delta V to slow ourselves down if we need to. It just takes a very, very long time because they're ion engines. So yeah, as you can see, I'm kind of messing around here. I don't want to dip too deep into the atmosphere because I don't want to have anything break off, and if I lose connection, I don't want to be high enough so things do not break off. Okay, so to help myself, I put on some alarm clocks to make this a lot better. And yep, thanks to that, we can jump to the precarious situation of our deep space satellite of Eve that is going to enter the atmosphere as the first thing. And yeah, I'm folding everything up except the big satellite, so because otherwise we wouldn't have a connection anymore if we come outside of the atmosphere again. And yeah, let's just time warp here a little bit. And now you'll see in just a second why I call this episode The Dancing Satellites. Because the weight is not perfectly stable, I lost connection, therefore I have no more control, and the craft starts to dance within the atmosphere. And as you can see, we're at 87 kilometers and rising, and we already have that much of stopping us, pretty much stopping us force and spinning us out of control. But here we go, we have a connection again. We can turn everything back on, unfold the solar panels. Nothing broke off, everything is still where it should be. And everything is set up. Now we need to slow ourselves down even further because it was not enough to get us into a stable orbit. We're still on an escape trajectory, and that's why I brought fuel along so we do not fly away. Okay, so we're just going to change our orbit here a little bit, and also I put on a lot of time that we need to get to Apoapс because we need to have all of the other crafts slow down before we reach Apoaps. That is preferable. So yeah, the next thing that is going to enter the atmosphere, and also we lost connection and it starts to dance out of control. I was really lucky here, and it was a pretty good idea of mine that I didn't go too deep into the atmosphere because otherwise things would have broken off here. I could have been smart enough and put the satellites in a certain trajectory or come in at a certain time, so I would have had connection even when we were on the dark side of the planet. And by dark side of the planet, I mean dark side of the planet towards Kerbal. But yeah, well, I didn't do it, and it still worked. Hooray! Okay, once again, we're just messing a little bit here to get ourselves out of the atmosphere so we do not burn up if we have a time collision and we have to do two things at the same time. Alright, yes, now let's jump to the Surveyor, the glorious Surveyor. There we go. This is actually the Surveyor 1, the one that will need to go into a 250 kilometer orbit. And there we go. Yes. This one was a lot more stable because most of the weight was at the bottom where the heat shield is. And yeah, we actually slowed ourselves down quite significant enough. Not enough to get us into a stable orbit, but once again, I was smart enough to bring enough Delta V with me and have these wonderful ion engines that you will see. And yep, this is 8 times acceleration, and it is still so very slow. really slow. Okay, let's move on. Surveyor number 2. Same procedure as every year. From dinner for one who knows or who doesn't know it, whatever. It's kind of a tradition here for New Year's that pretty much all of the country is watching this shortly before midnight. I don't know why this has established itself in my country, because my country speaks German and it's an English short movie, and I don't know, whatever. Who can argue about traditions and where they come from and why and whatsoever? So yeah, we also get this one here into a stable orbit after a long and tedious ion engine burn. There we go. So after a little while, I finished setting up the satellite network here over Eve. We have our Surveyor 1 in a 250 kilometer orbit in a polar orbit, so we have the best imaging data that we can. Then we have our where is it? There's it, Surveyor 2 in a 750 kilometer orbit. We have Satcom 3 and Satcom 2 completely on the opposite sides of the planet, communicating to the planet. And as an intermediary, we have our Satcom 1, which is the one who has the main connection that goes back to, there we can see it's to Kerbal. So network is set up and prepped and ready for whatever may come our way. So if we zoom in here, we don't really see much. Already I let 20 days pass and we completely discovered how underneath all of these clouds Eve is taking shape. Now, one of the things that I realize I'm going to have a problem with is, as you can see in the lower corner of the window here, is that there is no carbonite whatsoever here on Eve. So I will have to find another way to pretty much figure out how I'm going to get some fuel going, because as you remember, all of my other missions were intended to fly there, use resources at hand that are on the planet's surface, and then pretty much use that fuel to get ourselves from one spot to another. Now, one of the things that I did forget to turn on was the biome sensor, and as you can see, it still is measuring, but by the time we actually get a manned mission over here, we should have everything discovered. One of the things that is pretty cool is because we've brought the high orbit, the 750 kilometer orbit scanner, we actually have color altimetry already. There we go. As you can see, it is still in progress, and because it is in a higher orbit and only scans very little every time it passes over an area, it takes a little bit longer until it is complete. But you can definitely make out a lot more when all of this is in color, so hooray! Okay, so we have Eve set up. We are also now capable of using it for testing vehicles, so I'll probably off the screen we'll try to design some craft that will work with Eve once I come up with an idea how to use Eve's resources, if it even has any. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time.